Nothing. They ran outside, shouting her name. They found her 20 minutes later. She was hanging from a tree at the edge of the woods, a rope around her neck, her eyes. The bus rolled to a stop at the rusted gates of Camp Pinewood, and Jerry pressed his face against the window, grinning at the familiar sight of towering pines and the glittering lake beyond. This would be his 5th summer here, first as a camper, now as a junior counselor. He couldn't wait. "Home sweet home," he said, nudging his best friend Jake awake. Jake yawned and stretched. "Dude, it's barely 7 a.m. Why are you so pumped?" "Because this is going to be the best summer yet," Jerry said, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "No parents, no school, just us and 2 months of freedom." Behind them, Mary rolled her eyes as she gathered her things. "You say that every year, Jer. And every year I'm right," he shot back with a wink. Sam and Cynthia were already off the bus, taking selfies by the wooden Camp Pinewood sign. Jerry jogged over and photobombed their shot, making Cynthia laugh and Sam shove him playfully. "Classic Jerry," Sam said, shaking his head. The 5 of them had been coming to Camp Pinewood since they were 12. Now at 17, they were finally old enough to be junior counselors, responsible for the younger kids, but still young enough to cause trouble. Jerry loved that balance. Director Hartman gathered everyone at the flagpole for orientation. He was a gruff man in his 60s, with a permanent scowl, but Jerry had learned he was mostly bark and no bite. There were 8 other counselors besides Jerry's group, including Tommy Chen, a quiet guy who kept to himself, and Lisa Rodriguez, who'd been coming here almost as long as they had. "Welcome back, counselors," Hartman began. "I trust you all remember the camp rules. No wandering into the woods after dark. No swimming without a buddy. No pranks that result in property damage." He shot a pointed look at Jerry, who raised his hands innocently. "That was one time, sir, and technically the canoe was already cracked." A few people snickered. Hartman's scowl deepened, but he continued. "There's been some activity around camp lately. Vandalism. Someone's been messing with the equipment sheds, cutting ropes, breaking windows. If you see anything suspicious, report it immediately." The mood shifted slightly. Mary glanced at Jerry, concern flickering in her eyes. He gave her a reassuring smile and mouthed, "Probably just local kids." After orientation, they split up to prepare their cabins. Jerry was assigned to Cabin 7 with a group of rowdy 13-year-olds who arrived that afternoon. He fell into his role easily, organizing games, settling disputes, teaching them how to build a proper campfire. That first night, after the campers were asleep, Jerry met his friends at their usual spot, the old dock that jutted into the lake. They sat with their feet dangling over the water, passing around a bag of stolen marshmallows. "So what do you think about the vandalism?" Cynthia asked, her voice hushed. Jake shrugged. "Probably nothing. Maybe some bored kids from town." "Or maybe it's the ghost of Old Man Calloway," Sam said in a spooky voice, wiggling his fingers. Mary groaned. "That legend is so stupid. A prospector who died in a mining accident 50 years ago? Come on." "I don't know," Jerry said, staring out at the dark water. "Camp's been around a long time. Who knows what happened here?" "Don't tell me you actually believe that stuff," Mary said. Jerry grinned. "I believe in keeping an open mind." They talked and laughed until midnight, then crept back to their cabins. Jerry fell asleep quickly, the sounds of crickets and distant owls lulling him into dreams. The screaming woke Jerry at 6 a.m. He bolted upright, heart hammering, and threw on his shoes. Outside, people were running toward the lake. Jerry's campers stirred, confused, but he told them to stay put and ran after the others. A crowd had gathered at the old dock. Jerry pushed through, his stomach dropping when he saw Director Hartman crouched at the water's edge, his face ashen. "Everyone back," Hartman shouted. "Counselors, get the campers to the mess hall, now." But Jerry had already seen it, a body floating face down near the dock pilings. The back of the dark hoodie was unmistakable. It was Tommy Chen. Jerry felt his knees go weak. Mary grabbed his arm, her face pale. Oh my God, is he?" "Go," Hartman said firmly, looking right at Jerry. "All of you, take the campers to breakfast. I'll handle this." They stumbled away, herding confused and frightened children toward the mess hall. Jerry's mind was reeling. Tommy had seemed fine yesterday, Quiet, but fine. What happened? An hour later, the sheriff arrived, a heavy-set man named Kowalski. An ambulance followed, and Jerry watched through the window as Tommy's body was loaded inside, covered with a sheet. Hartman gathered all the counselors in his office. Tommy Chen drowned last night, he said, his voice heavy. The sheriff believes he went swimming alone, violated the buddy rule, and got into trouble. There will be an investigation, but these things happen. An accident? Jake said. You really think it was an accident? What else would it be? Hartman snapped, then softened. Look, I know this is shocking. If anyone needs to go home, I understand. But we have a camp to run, and those kids need us to keep it together. Jerry raised his hand slowly. Sir, the vandalism, do you think it's connected? The sheriff doesn't think so. Tommy probably just made a bad decision. But Hartman didn't sound convinced. That night none of them could sleep. Jerry met his friends at the dock again, their dock where Tommy had died. It felt wrong being there, but they needed to talk. Something's not right, Sam said quietly. Tommy was on the swim team. He wouldn't just drown. People drown all the time, Cynthia said, but her voice shook. Not people who could swim a mile without breaking a sweat, Sam insisted. Jerry stared at the water, remembering Tommy's body floating there. We should be careful. Stay together. Watch out for each other. You think someone killed him? Mary whispered. I think we don't know what happened, Jerry said carefully. But until we do, we need to be smart. They agreed to stick together, to never go anywhere alone. As they headed back, Jerry noticed something odd, fresh scratches on the dock post like someone had been clawing at it. He ran his fingers over them, frowning. What is it? Jake asked. Nothing. Just nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. 2 days passed. The camp tried to return to normal, but everyone was on edge. The campers whispered about Tommy's death, turning it into a ghost story. The counselors moved in pairs, jumping at shadows. On the third night, Jerry was awakened by his radio crackling to life. Jerry? It was Lisa Rodriguez, one of the other counselors. Her voice was panicked. Jerry, are you there? He grabbed the radio. I'm here. What's wrong? Someone's in the equipment shed. I can hear them moving around. I'm in cabin 4. I can see it from my window. Jerry's blood ran cold. Don't go out there. I'm getting Hartman. No, wait, they're leaving. I can see them. Dark hoodie, heading toward the woods. Jerry made a split-second decision. Stay inside, lock your door, I'm going after them. Jerry, don't. But he was already moving, pulling on shoes and grabbing his flashlight. He radioed Jake as he ran. Meet me at the equipment shed. Someone's here. The shed door was open, swinging slightly in the breeze. Jerry approached cautiously, his light cutting through the darkness. Inside, the shed had been ransacked again, ropes cut, equipment destroyed. And on the wall, painted in red, 3 more. Jerry's hands trembled. 3 more what? 3 more nights? 3 more. A scream shattered the night. Lisa, Jerry sprinted toward cabin 4, his heart threatening to burst from his chest. He could see Jake running from the opposite direction. They reached the cabin at the same time and threw open the door. The cabin was empty. Beds unmade, as if the campers had been evacuated, but Lisa's flashlight lay on the floor, still on, casting eerie shadows. Lisa, Jerry called. Lisa, where are you? Jake checked the bathroom. Nothing. They ran outside shouting her name. They found her 20 minutes later. She was hanging from a tree at the edge of the woods, a rope around her neck, her eyes wide and lifeless. Below her, written in the dirt, 2 more. Jerry doubled over and vomited. Jake stood frozen, his face a mask of horror. Other counselors arrived, drawn by the shouting, and the screaming began anew. Sheriff Kowalski called for backup. Within hours, state police arrived, and Camp Pinewood became a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the woods. Officers questioned everyone. Parents were called, and buses were arranged to evacuate the campers the next morning. Jerry sat in Hartman's office with his friends, all of them in shock. Tommy and Lisa, Mary whispered, both dead. Both murdered, Sam finished grimly. Someone's killing us. Not us specifically, Cynthia said, though she sounded uncertain. Maybe it's random? Jerry thought about the messages. 3 more. No. It's deliberate. Someone's counting down. Counting down to what? Jake demanded. Jerry met his eyes. To 5. There are 5 of us. Our friend group. What if we're the targets? The room went silent. That's insane, Cynthia finally said. Why would anyone target us? I don't know, but we need to stick together until those buses get here tomorrow. Sheriff Kowalski entered, his expression grave. We've got a problem. We found this in Lisa's cabin. He held up a photograph in an evidence bag. It showed Jerry and his 4 friends at the dock, taken from the woods. Red X's were drawn over Tommy Chen and Lisa Rodriguez, who were visible in the background. Where did you get this? Jerry asked, his voice hollow. Hidden under Lisa's mattress, along with these. Kowalski produced more photos, all of them, taken at different times, some from years ago. Either she was stalking you, or someone planted these to make it look that way. Lisa wouldn't, Mary started. There's more, Kowalski interrupted. We found Lisa's DNA under Tommy's fingernails. He fought someone before he died. And we found a dark hoodie in her closet, matching witness descriptions. Wait, Jerry said, his mind racing. You're saying Lisa killed Tommy and then someone killed Lisa? Or she killed herself out of guilt, Kowalski suggested. Though the evidence doesn't quite support that. What evidence? Sam demanded. Kowalski hesitated. The rope marks on her neck, they suggest she was strangled first, then hanged to stage a suicide. And there were defensive wounds on her hands. The implications hung in the air. Someone had killed Lisa and made it look like suicide. Someone who knew what they were doing. We're moving all of you to the main lodge tonight, Kowalski said. Officers will be stationed outside. You'll be safe until the buses arrive at 8 a.m. The 5 friends huddled in the lodge's common room, unable to sleep despite their exhaustion. Police flashlights swept the grounds outside. Every creak and groan of the old building made them jump. I don't understand, Cynthia said, her voice small. Who would want to hurt us? Maybe it's not about us, Jake offered. Maybe we're just in the way of something. The messages said 2 more, Jerry reminded them. That's specific, intentional. Sam stood and began pacing. Okay, let's think. Tommy and Lisa are dead. The killer obviously has access to camp. They know the layout, know our routines. That means it's someone who's been here before, or someone on staff. It could be one of the other counselors, Mary said quietly. Or even. She trailed off, looking at each of them. One of us? Jerry finished. You think one of us is the killer? I don't want to think that, but... A loud crash from upstairs cut her off. They all jumped, Jerry grabbing a fireplace poker. One of the officers ran up the stairs, gun drawn, while the other stood guard at the bottom. Probably just the wind, the officer at the stairs said, but he looked nervous. There's no wind, Sam whispered. The officer who went upstairs called down. Window's broken. Looks like a branch fell. But, you guys should come see this. They climbed the stairs reluctantly. The officer led them to one of the bedrooms, where a large tree branch had indeed crashed through the window, but it was what was tied to the branch that made Jerry's blood run cold. Another photograph. This one showed all 5 of them from just hours ago, sitting in the common room downstairs. Someone had been watching them tonight. And written on the photo in red marker, 1 more. That's it, Jake said, his voice rising to near hysteria. We're leaving. Now. I don't care if we have to walk to town. It's 15 miles through the woods, the officer said. And it's 2 a.m. You'd be more vulnerable out there. More vulnerable than sitting here like fish in a barrel? Jake shot back. Everyone calm down, Jerry said, though his own heart was hammering. We have 2 officers here. We're armed. We just need to make it until morning. Jerry's right, Mary agreed. 6 more hours. We can do this. They returned downstairs, the officers positioning themselves strategically. Jerry suggested they stay awake, keep watch on each other. No one objected. But as the hours crawled by, exhaustion took its toll. Cynthia dozed off in her chair. Sam's eyes drooped. Even Jake, who'd been adamant about staying alert, began to nod off. Jerry fought to keep his own eyes open. He watched the clock on the wall tick toward 4 a.m., then 5 a.m. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. At 5:30, one of the officers announced he was doing a perimeter check. Lock the door behind me, he instructed. Don't open it for anyone but me. I'll knock 3 times. They locked the door. Minutes passed, then 10 minutes, then 20. He should be back by now, Mary said nervously. Sam went to the window, peering out. I don't see him, or the other officer. Where? The lights went out. Cynthia screamed. Jerry fumbled for his flashlight, clicking it on. The beam swept across his friends' terrified faces. The generator, Jake said. Someone cut the power. 3 knocks sounded at the door. They all froze. "That's him," the remaining officer said, moving toward the door. The other officer. "Wait," Jerry said, a terrible feeling washing over him. "You said he'd knock 3 times, but which 3 times? 3 fast knocks? 3 slow knocks? You didn't specify a pattern." The officer paused, his hand on the doorknob. "You're right. Martinez, is that you?" he called through the door. Silence. Then 3 more knocks. Slower this time. Deliberate. "Martinez?" the officer called again. The door exploded inward. The officer flew backward, knocked off his feet. A dark figure in a hoodie and mask burst through, something metal glinting in their hand, a knife. Jerry grabbed Cynthia and pulled her behind him. Jake and Sam backed toward the kitchen. Mary screamed. The officer scrambled for his gun, but the figure was on him, and there was a sickening thud, and then the officer wasn't moving anymore. The figure stood slowly, turning to face them. Blood dripped from the knife. "Run!" Jerry shouted. They scattered. Sam and Jake crashed through the kitchen door. Mary dove behind the couch. Cynthia ran for the stairs, Jerry right behind her. The figure followed Cynthia. Jerry tackled them from behind, and they all went down in a heap. The knife skittered across the floor. Jerry threw wild punches, connecting with ribs with the face. But the figure was strong, throwing Jerry off and diving for the knife. Cynthia had made it halfway up the stairs. She screamed as the figure lunged after her. Jerry grabbed the fireplace poker and swung hard, catching the figure in the shoulder. They stumbled, but kept climbing after Cynthia. "No!" Jerry roared, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He reached them just as the figure grabbed Cynthia's ankle. She kicked backward, her heel connecting with the masked face. The figure lost balance, teetering at the top of the stairs. Jerry swung the poker again. The figure fell backward, tumbling down the stairs with a series of sickening thuds. They hit the bottom and lay still. Jerry and Cynthia stood frozen, breathing hard. Jake and Sam emerged from the kitchen, staring at the crumpled form. Is it dead?" Mary whispered from behind the couch. Jerry descended slowly, poker raised. He knelt beside the figure and pressed his fingers to their neck. "There's a pulse. They're alive." His hands shook as he reached for the mask. "Let's see who this son of a bitch is." He pulled the mask off. It was Director Hartman. "What?" Jake gasped. "Hartman? But why would he?" Hartman's eyes fluttered open. He smiled, blood on his teeth. "Wrong question," he rasped. "Should ask, who's really in control?" "What does that mean?" Jerry demanded, grabbing Hartman's collar. "Who are you working with?" But Hartman's eyes rolled back and he passed out. Sirens wailed in the distance. The second officer must have called for backup before. Jerry didn't want to think about what happened to him. "It's over," Mary said, starting to cry. "It's finally over." Jerry looked down at Hartman's unconscious form, then at his friends. Something nagged at him, something about Hartman's words. Who's really in control? He pushed the thought away. They'd survived. That's what mattered. The buses arrived at dawn, along with state police, ambulances, and news crews. Hartman was taken away in handcuffs, still unconscious. The officer from inside had survived, unconscious but alive. Officer Martinez was found dead near the generator. Jerry and his friends gave their statements, then collapsed on a bus heading home. They were alive. Traumatized, but alive. As the bus pulled away from Camp Pinewood, Jerry stared out the window at the camp sign. Something felt unfinished. Hartman's words echoed in his mind. Who's really in control? He thought about the timeline. The messages. The photographs. The careful staging of each murder. Had Hartman really done all of this? He was old, out of shape. Could he have overpowered Lisa, strung her up alone? Jerry's eyes drifted to his reflection in the window. He looked exhausted, haunted. Behind his reflection, he could see his friends sleeping. His gaze lingered on each of them. Mary, Jake, Sam, Cynthia, they'd made it. All 5 of them. Despite the countdown, 3 more, 2 more, 1 more, they'd all survived. But 3 people had died. Tommy, Lisa, and Officer Martinez. 3 people who weren't part of their core group. Jerry's blood turned to ice as realization crept over him. The countdown hadn't been about them. It had been counting down murders. Hartman had killed 3 people. But the message on that last photograph had said 1 more. Which meant there should have been 1 more death. Unless... Jerry caught his own eyes in the reflection and saw something there that made his breath catch. A strange expression he didn't recognize. Or did he? Deep in his mind, something stirred. A memory that wasn't quite his own. Of standing in that shack in the woods, arranging photographs on the wall. Of watching his friends from the trees, camera in hand. Of whispering instructions to Director Hartman, promising him money, fame, anything he wanted if he'd just play along. No, that wasn't real. That was impossible. Jerry squeezed his eyes shut, trying to banish the intrusive thoughts. When he opened them again, he saw Cynthia watching him from across the aisle, a strange expression on her face. "You okay?" she mouthed. He nodded and forced a smile. But his hand moved unconsciously to his pocket, where his fingers brushed against something small and plastic. His missing ID badge. The one that had been stolen. The one he'd dropped himself at the dock, knowing it would be found. Jerry jerked his hand away from his pocket, his mind racing. Where did that thought come from? That wasn't real. He hadn't dropped the badge. Someone had stolen it. Right? The bus drove on through the morning light. In the distance, barely visible through the trees, a figure in a dark hoodie watched the vehicle disappear down the road. The figure pulled out a phone and sent a single text message. Phase 1 complete. See you next summer. The reply came seconds later. Well done. They suspect nothing. The figure smiled and walked back into the woods, pulling off the hoodie to reveal someone's face the counselors would have recognized. Someone they'd never suspect. Someone who'd been planning this for a very long time.